Welcome to Building Reddit. I'm your host, Ryan H. Lewis. Reddit is a big place, and the safety of our users is one of our highest priorities. Scaling that safety is a constant focus, and we've built and evolved many different tools to enable that, used by Reddit employees and by community moderators. In today's episode, I'll be talking with Phil Aquilina, a staff engineer on the community safety team. His team recently had a big win with the release of the post guidance feature, which is built on top of the community automations platform that he designed. He's also been at Reddit for a while, so we'll dive into his tenure at Reddit, why he's still excited about coming to work, and how his work is making Reddit safer for everyone. Here's Phil.
So I work on the community safety team here at Reddit. I'm a backend engineer, primarily backend, don't do any front end. I started as an engineer here about 8 years ago. I went into management for about 5 years, and then I came back to engineering about 3 years back. I've been on community safety that whole time.
Tell me what your typical workday looks like nowadays.
Yeah. It's probably about a third code and design reviews, maybe a third meetings, and a third buckle down and write some code time. But I like that mix. It sounds like I don't get to code that much, but I like to do code review. I like to do that kind of stuff. I don't like the meetings as much, but those can be entertaining sometimes.
What do you like about Reddit? What do you like about working at Reddit?
Yeah. So I've been here for a long time. So I've seen it grow. But I've also worked at other companies that Steve and Chris, Steve's the CEO and Chris is the CTO. I've been at other companies that they've been at. I really like the culture they create. It's a culture of candor, of learning, but getting results, getting stuff done. And I don't know, it's it's a fun educational place to be. I've never really felt like the grass is greener looking at other companies. I've always wanted to be here, see it through. Now that we've IPO'd, even now I'm I don't know, what else is there? This is still pretty fun to me. I don't know, maybe we'll hit some scale or whatever where it's stops being fun, but still pretty cool working here.
Well, it's something you've learned in the past year, I guess, that excited you or you were interested in.
Well, I just put up a service where, sub 1,000 requests per second, everything was humming along. And right after that, everything fell over. So learning to, have the right amount of read replicas, I think is probably a good lesson learned. I don't know. It's not that interesting of a lesson, but it was a fun day trying to debug that and get it fixed.
Is this a testing and prod situation?
Yes. I wish we could go back and talk. That was one thing I was talking to another engineer on the project. Why didn't we do dark mode? Why don't we do a dry run of this? I was I don't know. I just didn't think about it. But I was looking back at my design doc. I was I had put in the comments hey, figure out how many read replicas make sense for this, and I never actually went back to it. And so we started scaling this thing up, and we had one write, one read, and things were going so well. And I was this is scary. Things are going too well, or when things are going too well, something's about to break hard. And we were at about 50% rollout, and for this particular service, I think we had 10 millisecond P99s, and I was all right, let's go for it. Let's hit 100. Just finish the thing, and all of a sudden everything caught on fire, and that was fun. I think we knew right off the bat it was probably something that had to do with just the CPU util going to at least Postgres instances, but it was fun to still kind of talk to storage and get their take on it and work through the problem.
Cool. So that's interesting because I feel sometimes I find myself in the same thing when I'm thinking through everything in the design stage. Those kind of random things will come up. I don't quite know the right answer for this. I need to figure it out later. How do you think though? How do you think, like in your case, like what's a better way to keep that from like falling through the cracks, basically?
Yeah. I think for that, like I really think I should have just like figured it out in the design, like chased down a storage person and got them to throw their opinions down on paper. Um, because then what's in the design, you're just following. It's just like kind of boring. You just follow the instructions.
That can be hard though, because like I mean, when you're writing the design, I know like a lot of times, like sometimes you'll get into flow, and you're like, this isn't necessarily important right now. Is it like could could a review or could like a co-writer or like, I mean, I don't know, like it's kind of creative how to fix a process issue, but it like, yeah, do you
Yeah.
have any ideas, things you want to try next time?
Yeah. I mean, like for that type of thing where it's like, I don't want to chase this down right now. I'll just like literally leave a comment in my doc as a to do. Cause I agree. Like, you read this thing. It's like that question could take up a half hour, an hour every time or whatever, just talking to the right person or getting in contact with the right person. So I'll leave that comment and just keep moving. And, by the end of my like first draft, I'll probably have like 5 to 10 comments that I just need to follow up on and get a good answer for.
Cool. Not trying to pin you down too hard.
No,
I just know
yeah.
I have the same problem. Like I have like I feel like I have an endless list of things I need to figure out, and it's like I miss at least a handful of them.
Yeah. No, I'm like, and that's the thing. Like, I have a to-do list for this particular service that we just put into prod like a month ago. I guess maybe, yeah, 2 weeks. Yeah, it's probably about a month ago. Where it's like I haven't had time. Like in this last month, I haven't had time to actually address this stuff. It's like, it's like medium size, and like it'll make things better. But like, there's just a slew of other things that are higher priority. And I just have to do those first, come back to them. And I know when I do those things, it will make my service more reliable or faster or whatever. But, got to get to those other, P1s, P0s or whatever first, and then deal with that later.
Are we talking about post guidance here?
We are, yeah. Community automations, yeah. It's just the thing that's been on my mind for like the last 3-4 months.
Yeah, we're kind of it's a little jumping ahead, but like explain what explain what post guidance is, and explain how it's working on the thing you just said, community automations.
Yeah. So post guidance is this cool feature that the moderators team built, which is I don't know, like a sibling or a cousin team to our team, community safety, who they do a lot of work with moderators, a lot of work for moderators. It is when you're typing something as a user, it will give you validation on the thing you're typing, and that validation is based off of the subreddit's like needs, desires for their community, their rules. It's very similar in terms of like kind of mental model as like Automod, in that these are like rules that you create ahead of time that are based off your community's norms or like actual official rules, and it will like help you scale your community so that you don't have to like be the person that's like actually going through all these posts and comments and like verifying these things are good. It will like filter, report, or inform are the 3 actions that post guidance does. I'm sorry, not filter. Block is the thing it does.
Cool. And so I know, not that I mentioned it on the podcast, but I kind of did some of the work on the pre, I guess the beta you could call it, and this is like the official thing.
Right.
It's on this community automations platform. What is that?
Yeah. So about 4 months ago, we had a snooze week. Community safety does a very similar thing that moderators do, where we create these kind of like if this then that type of automations, where given some signal based off of your post or your comment or the author themselves, we and like some setting that the subreddit has, we will filter that content for the subreddit. So similar idea, simpler in terms of actual like usage. There's just like a toggle or some settings that you can flip. But these are like very similar like workflows. There's a signal, there's there's a trigger, there's a signal, there's like a condition, and then there's an action. Those are kind of the primitives involved. So I was like, let's build a platform. Let's actually like combine these things together. That way we can platform community safety stuff and the moderator stuff, and make it a better overall experience for our users. Currently, if you're in like the mod tool section of Reddit, you'll see like the safety space and the moderator space, and you'll see this thing called automations, which is like another name, like we call it automations for some reason, but it's actually post guidance. Let's combine those things and like work towards a common future, so it's like an overall better experience for moderators. And that's what I built as a prototype in Snoodly. I built that in a week and demoed it a couple weeks later to the mods team. Yeah, they were trying to move off of that platform, which they baited on, and into like a Go service here at Reddit. So I demoed post guidance functionality to that team in late December, and they really liked it, and we decided to collaborate. So now so we spent a few months migrating over from dev platform to community automations. And so now post guidance is running 100% on this service, and community safety is now building our first, they're called one-click filters, but our first like moderator tool on this platform as well.
That's cool. Yeah, you because I know one thing that you've been working on for a while before this was the one-click filter thing, which if people aren't moderators on Reddit, they might not know what those are, but could you explain what those are?
Yeah,
and
sure.
Tell me about the new one that you're working on. You don't have to go into details of what it does, but
sure. One-click filters are well. Let me explain. I feel like a common moderator pain point, which is as their community grows, they need to grow their moderator team to actually deal with the influx of content. Alternatively, what a lot of moderators do is they use Automod, which is a really popular tool for our our bigger subreddits, to help kind of intermediate between users and their content and the moderators. So it has a few actions, but one of them is filtering to the mod queue. So it's taking that content, it's saying, hey, there might be something wrong with this. We're not sure, but there might be something wrong with it. Take it out of the user's kind of main listing view and put it into this thing we call the mod queue, which is kind of like a holding area for moderators just quickly filter through or like look through all these things and decide whether it's good to go or needs to be removed entirely. One-click filters are basically taking like the most useful stuff or some of the most useful stuff from Automod and moving that into kind of like one kind of discrete package. So some one-click filters are like our harassing content filter, which does what it sounds like it says it does, our ban evasion filter. I'm currently working on our reputation filter, which is backed by something called contributor quality score. But it's basically a measure of like how likely you are to be a bad actor on the platform, how likely you are to violate kind of like the global site-wide rules, and then filter based off of that measure.
That's cool. And then this can be, it's a little bit like I'm imagining it's like not a sky's limit, but the cool thing about having a platform like this is I would imagine probably back in the day, building a one-click filter took like a quarter or maybe longer. And I'm imagining now it's like going to be way easier. Is it easier? You're building one right now.
Yeah.
How's it different? The experience?
Yeah. So that's the value prop. It did take about a quarter. Basically we would pull up a new service for every one-click filter. It's probably going to take us a quarter to build this because it's the first time, but hopefully in the next quarter or the next thing we do, that will be a lot faster. I think it will be. I think the real, like that is a value prop for sure. The other real value prop in my opinion is that now that we have like a signal kind of like as a first class entity in this community automations platform, we can share that with post guidance. Post guidance, I think the plan there is to make it into like an automations. It's very similar to Automod, but make it into like an automations product. So we can give moderators this like more nuanced, more powerful signal, which CQS they already have that, but maybe like ban evasion or like this harassing content signal. Like those things are going to be first class entities on our platform. And when the time is right, we can expose that to moderators, and moderators can mix and match their like their signal. So now they can say, okay, given this harassing content score on this piece of content and this ban evasion score on this author, remove this thing entirely. And that becomes a really powerful thing, really powerful tool. So that's the dream. I think we're still some time out, but
I'm curious. So your team has basically built this platform. Who owns the who owns it at
who
that
owns it,
point?
right? Yeah.
Have you become a
Oh man,
platform team kind of?
that's a great question. We own it. That was part of the deal. We'll probably hand that off to the moderators team in the soonish regime. I don't know, in the next quarter or so. But it is, yeah, it's a little bit weird. It straddles the line, right? I've talked about this with other engineers, where it's like, how do we do this? Like, how do we handle a service where like there's multiple engineers or multiple teams getting value out of it? I don't know. I think I don't have a really great answer for that just yet. But in theory, like we hand this off. I think the at least the logic that goes into these filters is so simple that it's like not going to be a big deal. But famous last words, right? Like that, it could easily like not be the case. We'll probably quarantine off a section of the repo, and that will be like our section, the safety section, and we'll take it from there. But I think there's going to be some lessons to learn here.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes at Reddit, it feels like we scale, but we're trying to scale and be more scrappy, where we're trying to do more with like less ownership and less teams. I think of like Shreddit, for instance, or even I guess in some ways developer platform. It feels like some of our best things are those types of projects. And then sometimes we get a little bit in trouble with some of them.
Sure. Yeah. How I imagine this going at like this is my first rodeo at a company of this scale, but like I gotta imagine like as the company grows, basically we'll like fractalize, right? Eventually have like a moderated platform team, and that like kind of lives in the middle between like community safety and moderators and other teams that want to add their like automations into this system. But I don't know. Those are hard, right? Like spinning up a whole platform team is a big deal.
Yeah. It's not like you've done anything close to that. I'll get into that in a little bit because I'm curious. We're going to talk about other things you've done at Reddit, but so you mentioned before we started that it's clear that you like to tinker. You take your snooze week, which is our hack week here, and you build little platforms for automations. You also like electronics, and you mentioned some electronics projects. So I'd love to hear what are some of your favorite electronics projects that you've done in the past?
Yeah. Actually, one that I just think of is as I look over to the right here on my little workbench, which is just like such a cliche electronics person workbench, it's a total mess. I built this little Game Boy system with my kids. So you take like a Raspberry Pi Zero, and this is a kit. The other thing I've learned is like while building things with my kids is like keep it simple, right? Like they're not going to be interested in you reading data sheets or whatever. But which I've tried that. It doesn't work. So I bought this kit for a Game Boy, and I wrote this script for scraping like a Raspberry Pi Twitter account or something like that. But like I couldn't get like a Raspberry Pi Zero there like in huge demand for a while. So I wrote this script to like, let me like text me. So finally got this Raspberry Pi Zero, finally got this kit, and we're building this like cool looking old style Game Boy. And so we're not doing a lot of soldering, just a little bit, but like it's like kind of plug and play, but it's been a really good experience with my kids.
Has it held up? I'm imagining they've dropped it at least once.
I can show it to you. It's like it's in pieces right now. There is a loose
Wait,
connection.
Why is it in pieces?
Because there's a loose connection. So like I don't know if you see this. Kind of cool.
Oh,
like
nice.
Style.
Okay, yeah, it's like a clamshell.
But the damn thing, like I can't. There's like the button will not like the A B buttons will only work sometimes. Just drives me bonkers. And I'm trying to debug it, but yeah, finding time for that kind of stuff is difficult these days.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. What's another one?
What else? Robots, I think, are really popular again. Sorry, these are kind of kid themed. That's my life now. But I built a couple robots at this point with my kids, and those are the same deal, right? Buy the kit. But I taught my oldest one to solder to do this to do one of these robots. It's like a Pathfinder type, where it's like you lay down some black tape, and it's got like these IR no, they're like photoresistor sensors, where like if it veers off, it's like measuring like how much light is being reflected into the sensor. And when it's I forgot if it's less light, the resistor goes hot, like the resistance goes up. But anyway, that's enough to like kind of signal on. So anyway, I taught one of my kids to solder, and that's been like kind of a cool but a little bit harrowing of an experience because like he's wielding this like wand that could just give you a third degree burns. I'm not worried for him; I'm worried for me. But yeah, so just little projects here and there.
How old is your son? The soldering son?
He's 7. Yeah, I think I taught him when he turned about 7. So he's been in it for we haven't done it in a while, but a few months now.
That's cool. Where do you get the kits at? Is there a place you'd recommend?
All over, yeah. Like the robot I actually got from Amazon, I think probably 10 years ago, and it's just been sitting in a box somewhere. The kit I found on the Game Boy kit I found on Reddit, on I think the Raspberry Pi subreddit. There's like a British company, just like one guy making these kits, and I'm like, oh, this is perfect, so easy. Look at that. And then if it's something I want to do myself, which I've done that in a while, start from scratch. There's this software called KiCad or KiCad. It's like an open source like PCB editor software. It's pretty neat. That plus Chinese manufacturers that like make these PCBs for like $8.
Did you learn about like PCB design in school?
No. I was a mechanical engineer. Didn't do any of that. I found like I think it was Udemy or Coursera, Udemy class, and right after Nicholas was born. This was like 7 years ago. I did that for like a year, just kind of taking little classes here and there. I finally got to the point where I was like kind of comfortable with it, and shipped off my first PCB, and it's not as bad as you think. Like when you've done, like, it's like programming is what it is. Like these ICs at this point basically have like functional output, like inputs and outputs, and you just have to worry about those. They're black boxed otherwise, and like it's, I don't know. Other than pouring through data sheets, it's pretty fun, pretty relaxing activity.
That's cool. Okay, so you just mentioned you went to school for mechanical engineering. Tell me how you went from that into software.
Yeah, that was kind of an interesting road. So I was working at a company called Loral, which is a company, I don't know if it still exists or if it's just been renamed, down in Mountain View, Palo Alto, that area there. And they make satellites. And I was working as a mass properties engineer, which is, it sounds cool. It's a lot of like spreadsheet jockeying. It's like, taking into account like how many bolts are in this part of this satellite, and like what's the CG, what are the mass properties, and do that 1,000 times over. So it's like a lot of spreadsheet work, and it's like moving these like cells from one place to another, right? And there's like kind of like a human algorithm for this. And so my first taste of programming outside of college, at least, was writing this like Visual Basic for VBA script, Visual Basic for applications, to do that for us, and stuff that was like a day's activity turned into seconds, and that code was awful. Like in retrospect, I didn't know anything about how to write code back then. But it worked, and I distributed it to the other engineers at the company, the other mass properties engineers, and they found it helpful. And they came to me with feature requests. And man, that's so fun. Like I just love that cycle of like, oh, like I want this. Oh, let me, give me a deck, and then here, give it back to you. And they're like, oh my god, this is so cool. Now give me this, right? Like I love that. It was really, it just like unlocked something in me. I didn't know that was like that was something I was interested in. So I started to teach myself programming. It was Ruby at the time, and I would just do it like at lunch or like after work, go to Starbucks or whatever. Just do it an hour or two here or there every day. And eventually, I felt confident enough that like maybe this is something I could do for a living. But I just didn't know how to make the transition into software engineering or like to like the industry. So I found this place called Dev Bootcamp. I don't know if it's still a thing. I think it got purchased by a bigger company. And I did that as a way to make some connections in the industry. Like I knew there's like a job fair thing at the end. Steve Huffman was actually the CEO of Reddit. Was actually a mentor there, and it was cool. Like it was cool. Like he gave a talk one time, and he just sounded so like incredibly smart, right? And he on the last day he was giving interviews to people as like one of the people at the quote unquote job fair, and I worked up the guts to go ask him for an interview. I promptly bombed it, and I felt so terrible afterwards. Yes, he asked me to code up Fibonacci, like a Fibonacci solver.
Was that on the spot? He was just,
yeah.
You were like, give me an interview, and he was like, do this right now, and you were like,
yeah, right. Like write a function that takes like an input and spits out like whatever the Fibonacci number is, and yeah, just like I think I just choked. Right, I just got so nervous. And that night, because I felt so bad, I was like, I'm going to write this in Ruby. I'm going to write this in Python. I knew the company he was the CTO of a company called Hitmonk. I knew that company was a Python shop, and I'll write that in JavaScript. So I didn't know Python at the time, but I learned enough to like, write this one function. And I sent all those to him and that night. And he sent me an email back the next day. I was like, hey, come in for an interview. I was like, what? Like that actually worked. And he's like, write tic-tac-toe. I was like, crap. So I wrote up a really crappy tic-tac-toe. But I think that was more to have something to talk about when I went into interview, which back then that was in a small office by the ballpark in San Francisco. And like he interviewed me in like literally the closet. Like there was no other place to interview people. And he just tore into my tic-tac-toe. He found like bugs, like he was trying to find bugs, and he found one like within seconds. But like he asked me questions about like what I was interested in, and like what I would have done differently within the code, what he thought I should do differently. He was giving me feedback, and I think it was a good conversation. And he saw some potential there, some spark, and he gave me a job. And that was my first job working as a software engineer. I did that I was at that company for like 2.5, 3 years before Steve came to Reddit. And I remember at the end of my 3 years, I was like, I'm a good programmer. I'm like so good at this. And boy, was I so wrong. But anyway, like that's how, like at Hitmonk, I was like hustling. Like I was trying to like get good fast. And so like every weekend I would go to, there's like Phil's Coffee near our like, near where I was like with my girlfriend at the time, but like where she was staying, and I would go there every weekend just to work, just to like learn something new. And yeah, and like I was getting good, but I wasn't like as amazing as I thought I was. I was like mediocre, but I was like, I can program anything I want to now, right? Like that kind of confidence. Just not realizing, oh, like I can do that, but it's not going to be good. Sorry, I think I was rambling there, but yeah.
No, there's some kind of there's some kind of like I feel like this XKCD or maybe should be or something where it's like, yeah,
Oh,
it's like
totally.
developers, as you learn a little more, your confidence goes up. And then as you
Yeah,
learn even more, your confidence goes back down.
exactly. I was very solidly in like in the early like part of that ramp, right? Like where I was like, I can do
Yeah.
anything I want to, but in reality, I actually like any other engineer like who has been doing this for a while would be like, dude, that's not going to scale. Like you can't, I don't know, you can't make a database call in a loop like that. That's a terrible idea. Like that kind of stuff.
I think there's something like that kind of excitement and confidence is like, it's kind of like what keeps you going. It's what keeps you
Yeah,
learning, I feel like, because,
yeah.
as you keep learning, then it's like, it's, I don't know. Do you feel like your excitement has decreased as your career has gone on, or has it changed?
Um, I'd say it's changed. I think I'm definitely more tempered. But there's like back then it was like everywhere I looked, there was something to learn, and that's a fun place to be. Now I really have to be deliberate about learning. I have to find time for it. I have to find people that are better than me, and I have to like get like really pick their brain on this or that topic. So it's a little bit harder to like really kind of pull in new information. You have to just be way more deliberate about it. But it's still fun. Like it's fun in a different way. It's like I I think I've like matured as a person. Like back then, it was like, oh, I could code anything I want by myself. Now it's like I can build anything I want with a team and like, like get that like, as long as I can collaborate and work as a person on a team. And that's fun in a different way, right? I love building stuff with other people.
I think, yeah, and I do think though that like what I love about like hack weeks and snooze weeks and even just like personal projects is you can kind of get that initial spark back of like
Yeah.
nobody tells me what to do, like I can move as fast as I want. And when you did the community automations platform for snooze week, did you just do that on your own?
Yeah, yeah, mostly. Like I actually started with this engine that a coworker of mine made, Jason Miller. He wrote this really nice rule engine, and I took that as like the basis, and I just wrapped that in a database. But yeah, like mostly just like, well, actually, that's not true. Like after a little while, after I kind of sold it to some teammates, and they joined in too. But yeah, that was kind of like after I laid the groundwork.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. How did you end up at Reddit? So you were at Hitmonk 3 years,
Yeah.
thought you were the bee's knees, and then how'd you get at Reddit?
Yeah. So yeah, about 3 years I hit Monk. Steve and Chris Lowe left. David King too, and they went to Reddit. And I remember being pretty like emotionally. I was pretty bummed about that, because these are people I was learning from. I looked up to them, and like they were more or less the reason I was at Hitmonk. I didn't realize that at the time, but it's true. So they left, and then I was kind of cruising for a few months there for a while, and then we had to do some layoffs. I was a manager at that point, manager of a small team, so it was like kind of tech lead slash manager role. But I had to lay off a couple people, and that sucked. I was like, that I don't want to do this anymore. And so I think Chris or David reached out to me. It's like, hey, let's go get some beer. Let's have some beers. I was like, yeah, I know what this is about. And so I met them by the Reddit offices. I forgot what the name of the place was, but yeah, they said I should interview. I interviewed, eventually got a job at Reddit, and then yeah, I started here on the front end. Actually, I was building the second version of the mobile web app.
Had you been doing front end at Hitmonk? Is that what you focused
Yeah,
on?
a little bit. Yeah, I mean, it was like full stack. But like again, like I feel like when people, at least when I say full stack, it's like I can do front end. I'm like really bad at the back end. That's what I mean by full stack. Uh, and so that's what I was doing at Hitmonk. So I came in as full front end at Reddit.
You've already mentioned you've been here for a while. Tell me about like the the top three. let's just do two. I don't want to go for too long. What are the top two things that you're like proud of that you worked on at Reddit?
Yeah. Okay, so I was kind of thinking about this a little bit. I had a very, very small part in our place, like the first our place. Back then, Reddit was like really small. It was like probably 30 or 40 engineers, and they needed like someone help just to help out, knock out a few tickets towards the end, like last few weeks. And so I joined in doing like front end work. I think I like built like WASD type of controls is one thing. Like that's like I think I fixed the timer, like some bugs with the timer, something like really small tickets. But like that bought me a ticket into like the room when we launched. And I think like thinking back on it, I think there's like probably 15 people in that room. But being like watching it happen in real time, like, I don't know, that was like a really cool experience. Like I think back really fondly on that time. And just like watch. I remember I like went up to my in-laws that weekend, and I spent the whole time on my laptop just watching our place just grow into like this kind of beautiful canvas. And yeah, that's probably up there. I guess the other one I was thinking of was GraphQL. I wrote the original design doc, told Chris Lowe on it way back when. He was actually just my director at the time. This was before he was CTO. But like again, like just so much to build there from the ground up, right? Working with the team, it's just like probably 4 other engineers. I was managing again. I seem to make the same mistakes over and over, but uh, and yeah, just starting from the ground. There's so much to do, right? Like just pulling in all these things and sifting through like what we need to just get this out the door. That was a really fun experience.
What year was that? Do you remember?
The GraphQL one,
Yeah.
2017, 20, yeah, probably around 2017, late 2017.
I remember like, I guess around that time it was maybe a little more mainstream, but I'm curious, like, if you remember any of the discussions or the trade-offs or your thoughts about like, because GraphQL is like it's a very different paradigm from like typical REST things. There's a lot of investment in a new
Right.
backend and a new front end. It's like all of this new stuff. How did you decide like, yes, this is what we should do, and we're confident that it wasn't like too early or it wasn't just going to be a fad or something?
Yeah. I mean, I wish I had a good answer here. Like I had just come off of doing mobile web and dealing with our API and just being like, this is so bad, like so frustrating. Because it's just like our API just kind of grown naturally over the years. And it was just kind of inconsistent hodgepodge. Um, and so there was another technology at the time that I think like Netflix was doing similar idea to GraphQL. And so I was like debating between that and another thing. I'd been like basically following that for a couple of years because it seemed like it solved a lot of like at least for the front end, like the front end's problems. Like ask for just what you need, don't get the extra stuff. And yeah, I think like I think it was a lot of like I wish I could say like this is what Reddit needed at that moment. I'm not sure that that's true. It was like what I thought was cool at that moment, and I managed to sell someone high enough in the chain on it. I think in retrospect, it ended up being a good decision. I think I'm not a front end engineer, so hopefully they're not like cursing my name or whoever on the GraphQL team now. But yeah, I think things like it solved one problem, which is like it facaded away a lot of the at least at the time, like the monolith, the R2 endpoints, it facaded away those endpoints. And that meant we could swap out backends for it whenever we needed to. And over time, that became true, right? Like we started with the thing service behind the scenes there. That became like that was like a wrapper around R2's database. That's a start. But that started to kind of split up and eventually break up into smaller microservices. And now we're at the point now where GraphQL is just like, I don't even know how many services it talks to, probably dozens of services. And we can break apart that like the monolith. So now thing is the new monolith. We can break apart that monolith with something in front of it that is I don't know, that is unshifting, right? We don't have to change that API now. It's just like that is on you on the front end. Don't have to worry about like the thing service at all. We'll just ship that out from behind the scenes.
So you're staff engineer at Reddit. What how would you describe what that role like is responsible for and does, I guess, at
Yeah,
Reddit?
yeah. So staff engineer is a leadership role at Reddit. Um, I mentioned earlier, spent some time looking at design docs. That's definitely part of the role. Code review, both high leverage things. But I think like when I think of staff engineer, I think of like a counterpart to an EM in like the technical vision, technical strategy setting side of things. So an EM PM will set like kind of the product roadmap. Well, I guess the EM is probably more thinking about personnel and like how to staff or like resource some project, but like they're thinking about like the product side of things, and I'm thinking about how to like actually get to that point in a way that makes sense, right? Like gets us there, hopefully improves things along the way. You're trying to find, the intersection between like, hey, I can achieve your product and also build a thing that makes it easier for us to build more product, right? Or us to like not have to be woken up in the middle of the night with some alert or whatever. Like I want to improve my life too, but I also want to achieve the thing that you want us to build.
Have you seen as Reddit has grown, like I guess in some ways that engineering, it's not even engineering counterpart to the EM because EM is also engineering manager, but maybe it's more like in the IC role. Have you seen that role has like evolved, like it's more necessary now and it wasn't in the past, or was it always there in the past and it just wasn't maybe like official? Or have there always been staff engineers at Reddit since you started?
There wasn't always, but it was pretty quickly after I started. I think like when I became the manager of the platform team here, that's when we definitely had staff. Like I know we had staff engineers at that point, but they were really few and far between. And actually, I kind of think that role at that time was a very, very high leverage role because just as there's so few of them, and there was no principals. I don't think at the time. That took a couple more years, I think, after we kind of defined the roles to actually get our first principal. Um, so yeah, staff engineer. There wasn't as many staff engineers. I think there was a high leverage role at that time, and nowadays it feels like there's definitely more staff engineers. I don't know if the role has shifted. Probably your ability to change like vast swaths of the tech has changed. So I guess high or lower leverage in that way, but like the role feels pretty similar. Right? Your counterpart to your EM and PM.
Tell me more about the community safety team, or maybe just safety in general. Like, I think that especially when I started Reddit, I like didn't quite understand the separation between like security and safety, and they're
Mm-hmm.
really not the same thing at all. But I think I don't have like before I came to Reddit, I wasn't in any social media companies. Safety wasn't necessarily a thing at any place that I'd been before. So, could you kind of describe like what I guess, the goal of the safety team is and your team
Yeah,
too?
yeah. I mean, it's funny that you said that safety and privacy, or sorry, security seem like they're similar because I think they actually started as like under the same pillar when I first started here. But yeah, I think it's split now. Yeah, like I think the best way I think about this are like the most real example I can think of here is my sister trying to use Reddit a few years ago. She uses Reddit, she posts a comment, and she immediately gets just like destroyed in the replies, just like really mean comments. And that's like she still works, but she does not participate. And so like as far as I know, like I think that's it. Like I think that's like our role here at safety is like how do we make that not a thing, right? Like we just scared someone off of the platform, and that's a big deal, right? Someone who could have had who could have has like perhaps a diverse opinion on something, or someone who has something really smart to say and like can't say or like too scared to say it. So when I think of safety, I think of like the kind of like practical output is like giving people a place like to feel like belonging. Like that is like kind of that's like Reddit's mission. Safety plays, I think, a big part of that.
And so in that umbrella, your team is kind of not a little different, but like what's your team specific mandate?
Yeah, it does feel different, right? Like, so a lot of safety deals with like admins and AE ops type of workflows. So it's actually like Reddit itself as an entity is removing content, and like that violates our site-wide policy. Um, our team is a little different. We're like the moderators. Like we like our mission is, I forget, destroy this, I think, but or totally butcher this, but like it's to empower moderators to keep their community safe, right? Something like that. It's a very like it's a lower level um, uh, mission than like the rest of the safety org. In that we have to think about the nuances of the community, right? We want to give moderators the ability to decide for themselves at the end of the day. So that means like various settings on these one click filters that we built these tools, and really paying attention to like what they care about, right? That's definitely different than the rest of safety.
One of the interesting things with moderators is I feel like they're very good at giving us feedback, and that is I would feel I consider that as like a blessing, because
Yeah,
not,
I do too.
Not that like your end users, like there's something to be said that sometimes your end users don't know what they want until you give it to them.
Yeah.
And it's maybe like a questionable like take, but I do know that, like, you know, when people are telling you like at least what their problems are, that is like, it's just amazing. So when y'all are like planning things, how far out do you find that usually like are planning? Like, because moderators are probably like, you know, complaining. And I mean, do y'all usually plan out like a year in advance, a quarter in advance? Like how far do you go?
Yeah, I mean, I wish we plan out a year in advance. I think we're more like quarterly bound, but you know that's getting better. I think as we kind of get more clear in the things we care about, the values that we have, and like the what's the word for like the metrics we care about. I don't know. With us, it's like there's so much low hanging fruit right now, right? Like the reputation filter, as an example, feels pretty obvious. Band evasion, that was the thing we launched a couple quarters back. That's like pretty obvious. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I want to get better at like the long term planning, but there's enough kind of like just low level stuff that we need to get done that like it doesn't seem as important.
That's cool.
I'm sure my EM and PM are like, what the heck's this guy say?
I mean, there's definitely a difference between like vision and planning. So, you know, sometimes you have a longer term vision and you know, things you want to know, you want to get around to, but then like, yeah, really setting in stone that makes sense. Quarters.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Before we wrap up, what are some good subreddits that people? I also like tinkering. I was very interested. You mentioned the Game Boy kit that you found in a subreddit. What are some good subreddits for like tinkering, electronics projects, stuff like that?
Oh man, I got a whole slew. I don't use them anymore, but multi-writes were a big thing. I used to keep like a really curated list of all the like technical subreddits that were 3D printing, electronics, ask electronics. Whenever I do like a PCB, I always ask if there's like a printed circuit board subreddit, like spell the whole thing out, where you can say like, hey, review my thing. Yeah, those are pretty good places to start. I'm sure that I'm missing some good ones, but yeah, I love that. Like I love those subreddits. Like I just like I mean, this gets into like why I love Reddit, but it's like you don't know what you don't know. But like the cool thing about those subreddits is like people are asking questions. We were like, hey, what is the answer to, like, what is that? Like, what is the answer there? I actually am genuinely curious. And like you're learning just almost like through osmosis. Like other people are saying these things and you're just kind of slowly absorbing these things, even like when you're doom scrolling or whatever through your feed.
Awesome. Okay. Well, Phil, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Ryan.
Excited to see what comes out of the automation platform. Maybe I'll think of some idea to throw in there. That might be fun.
Okay. Yeah.
How we can connect it to a developer platform or something.
Oh, dude, that's in the back of my mind.
So what do you think? Does it sound cool to build Reddit, one of the largest sites on the internet? If so, check out our open positions at www.redditinc.com/careers. And to get more behind the scenes info, check out Reddit's engineering blog at reddit.com/r/redditeng. And that's it for now. See you in the next episode of Building Reddit. Building Reddit is an official podcast from Reddit. This episode was produced by Ryan H. Lewis. Thanks for listening.